Okay, I'm sorry to say, but you have been lied to. What? Because have you been upgrading your phone expecting better camera, but it's the same? Well, you see, every year companies promise game-changing updates for their cameras. But they don't tell you that they're using the same old sensors with more AI tricks. But with this Xiaomi 15 Ultra, this one does something totally different. And once you see what this smartphone can do, you might never trust those spec sheets again. Alright, let's start with the biggest flex of this phone, the Leica Sumilex lens system. Now Leica has been working with Xiaomi for a while, but this time it's on a whole new level. Now the focus here just isn't some AI processing or some software tricks, because they've actually rebuilt the lens system from ground up. Now first off, the main lens has a massive f1.63 aperture, which means way more light gets in. Now this means brighter shots, less noise, and even faster shutter speeds. And all of this is while maintaining the ISO settings for a cleaner image without any grain or artifacts. And this is super prominent, especially for nighttime photography, as seen in these photos as well. Then the 8P aspherical lens makes sure that everything stays sharp from edge to edge, so you won't get those weird distortion or any blurriness in the corners. But a real game changer is the dual layer anti-glare lens cover, because Xiaomi has upgraded this to Corning Gorilla Glass 7i with an anti-glare coating on both sides. Now this makes a huge difference when shooting in tricky lighting situations, because it does cut down reflections and improves the overall optical clarity, but at the same time to make sure that the shot stays crisp, like these shots of the traffic lights and the lighted up signs where it was really overexposed when I see it in real life, but it was nicely balanced in these photos as well. Then there's the enhanced ALD coating to reduce flare, where there's a spin-coated infrared filter to stop those weird flower-shaped flare effects, which usually happens when shooting lights, especially for things like car headlamps. Now this has been and still is a huge issue for iPhones and Pixel phones when it comes to the night shots, where this has a lens edge ink coating that stops internal reflections from messing with your image. And then there's the color accuracy, because what's the point of having very nice lenses when the colors doesn't look right? So instead of the usual 3-channel RGB sensor, which other smartphones tend to do, Xiaomi threw in a 13-channel multi-spectral sensor. Translation? Well, it sees colors so much more accurately, like these macro shots of these two flowers, where it does improve white balance by 10%. Then skin tones also becomes even more natural, and if there's a scene where there's mixed lighting, for example in this particular image there's a combo of a cooler and a warmer white light at the staircase area. For situations like this, it will be handled like a pro. So if you're taking sunset photos, you will get a more accurate color, so no more wondering why the sky looks like a radioactive orange smoothie instead. Now let's talk about the zoom system, because most phones fake their zoom with digital cropping, but this Xiaomi 15 Ultra has 4 dedicated lenses covering everything from an ultra-wide 14mm to a crazy 200mm periscope telephoto lens. And this of course is perfect for moments when you try to zoom in to something that you can't even see with your naked eye, like this ox statue at the top of the Sagrada de Familia building. Then the 14mm ultra-wide camera isn't just wide, it is also smart too, because usually ultra-wide shots get stretched or even distorted, where the phone fixes that in software. But Xiaomi has redesigned the lens itself to eliminate distortion, meaning no software trickery and no loss of image quality. But the 23mm main lens is where things gets really serious, where it packs a huge 1-inch Sony LYT900 sensor. Yep, they didn't do a Vivo and take them off, which means that there is a massive light intake with overall better detail and incredible low light performance, where it even lets you switch between 23mm, 46mm and 100mm focal lengths, which is perfect if you're shooting portrait of humans or even cats, where you get a very nice DSLR-like control. Then here's something which is quite wild, because the 70mm floating telephoto camera is very unique by itself, because most telephoto lenses can't focus close up, and if you try, the phone switches to the wide angle lens, then you lose that beautiful telephoto compression. But Xiaomi has split the lens into 2 groups, so the rear lenses actually moves. So it gets a wider focus range from 10cm to infinity, allowing you to have better spatial compression and the background blur or the bokeh effects. And I found that this 70mm focal length to be very useful, specifically for food photography and also for far away shots of a person as well. Then there's the 200 megapixel periscope telephoto camera at 100mm. Yep, 200 100 megapixels, where it's using Samsung's new HP9 sensor, which is 136% better in capturing light compared to the previous model. Now this means is that when you zoom into 100mm, you get insane details and brightness without having your photos look like a watercolor painting, where this is one of my favorite lenses to use during the day and night as well. Then finally, the 200mm mode is also amazing for far away shots, even it is technically a digital zoom, but as seen in these photos, the photos had amazing color accuracy, tech sharp, and had great dynamic range as well, perfect for capturing moments from far away. So yes, this proves that having a top tier hardware is one thing, but what really takes this camera system to a next level is Xiaomi's AI SP 2.0, which is basically Xiaomi's AI photography brain. And here's where the selfie photos did a very great job too, whether or not it's on a single person or even with two people in a shot too. But if you think the photos are amazing, check out the video performance next. But before that, if you guys are enjoying this video so far, do give this video a nice big thumbs up. That would be very much appreciated as we're reaching towards 200,000 subscribers here in the channel, and thank you very much in advance. Now, if you're into videography, here's where things gets really insane, because other than being able to record up to 8K, first off, Dolby Vision HDR recording is now available at 4K 60 FPS on every single camera, where you can even switch the lens mid-recording without losing HDR consistency. Now, speaking of HDR, this trippy footage of In the Mind of Gaudi inside of Casa Batlló was shot even without adjusting the exposure throughout, so it did handle the exposure extremely well. Then there's the ASUS certified 10-bit log recording, and this isn't some random log profile, as it is industry standards color science from the Academy of Motion Pictures and Sciences. So if you do some serious color grading, this is really big. As you can see with this particular log footage, without and with color grading, it looks amazing, as you can see side by side. Then for the first time ever, Xiaomi has also 4K 120 FPS slow motion, and this is both on the main and the 4.3 times telephoto cameras as well. Now this means you have cinematic slow-mo without dropping down to 1080p when you use on both specific focal lengths. Then even stabilization also got a boost, where the Ultra Image Stabilization now uses a full sensor area, so it's more stable than before. Then they even added the focus breathing compensation, where even some Sony mirrorless cameras struggles very much on this, which means that when you pull focus, you won't get that weird zooming effect. Now, while the new photography kit for the Xiaomi 15 Ultra is really good for photos, but I specifically really love my experience when it comes to video recording, as the dedicated video recording button and the zoom in slider has been such a godsend. And of course, the camera style of ergonomics with a built-in battery was also a huge plus as well. So to power all of this, Xiaomi has included the latest and greatest Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset. Now this 3nm chip is 45% faster and 52% more efficient, and the GPU is also 44% better when it comes to the overall graphics. Then Xiaomi also took an extra care when it comes to the cooling, as they designed the wing-shaped 3D dual-channel ice loop cooling system. So even when you're recording long videos or even gaming, you won't feel any lag during recording or any heat at all. Now, if you want a recap of everything mentioned in this video, we do have a written version of this entire video and also some sample photos for you to look and read about, which is at our website at www.adamlobo.tv. Links to the website will be down below, where we also have our daily tech news over there too. Alright, let's talk about the new Xiaomi HyperOS version 2, because without it, the phone's hardware wouldn't be able to work, because honestly, it is way more faster, it is smarter and more personalized than before. Now, other than the performance being leveled up, the entire UI is smoother, animations feels more natural, and apps also load significantly faster. Now, Xiaomi has definitely done some very serious optimization over here, making sure that everything feels snappy and even multitasking heavily. Then Xiaomi has also introduced AI-powered dynamic wallpapers. So now, instead of a boring static image, you have a subtle motion effects that makes your phone feel alive. But if you want a lock screen to look more like a movie poster, there's the AI cinematic lock screen that adds a depth effect, blurring the background while keeping the subject sharp. So this does give your lock screen to have the premium and cinematic aesthetics. Then there's also some improvement on the AI photo editing tools. So removing unwanted objects, expanding images is even more accurate. And as for video creators, there's the AI-powered auto edit feature, which makes instant cinematic video clips from your gallery, syncing everything to the beat of your music with professional level transitions. But probably the biggest game changer is the deeper Google Gemini integration, because with the Xiaomi HyperOS 2, it lets Gemini to analyze what's on your screen, summarize web pages, explain images, and even suggest actions based on what you're doing. So now it's basically an AI assistant that actually understands the context instead of just answering questions. So, is the Xiaomi 15 Ultra the best camera phone ever made? Well, with a price of 5,199 ringgit for the 512 gigabytes and 5,699 ringgit for the 1 terabyte option with 16 gigabytes of RAM on each. Well, I'll put the USD conversion on the screen here. It is indeed something truly worth it. Because if you want a true DSLR level control, next gen AI processing and the most advanced zoom system on any phone, this is it.